Some entitled millionaire tried to humiliate me after a car crash, until he found out I own half the city. Now we're forced to work side by side, and it changed everything. I've been called a lot of things in my life, most of them behind my back: recluse, runaway rich kid, the Hale family ghost. But most people just don't call me anything at all, because most people don't know who I am. And that's how I've survived this long. My name is Ethan Hale, only son of Richard Hale, the man who practically owns half of Riverton City, a gleaming metropolis that prides itself on glass towers, waterfront condos, and a clean divide between the people who live above the 20th floor and the ones who never get anywhere near it. People call my father the Steel King, because everything from the bridges to the stadium roofs to the reinforced frames of luxury condos probably has Hale Industries fingerprints on it somewhere. But despite being born into more wealth than I could ever spend, I haven't used the Hale name, not in years. No security entourage, no private jet, no press coverage, no expectations. Instead, most people around here just know me as Ethan, the night shift parts runner at Carlisle Auto and Hardware. My biggest job responsibility is delivering brake pads and engine coils to mechanics at 2 a.m. in a dented 2006 Honda Civic, beige, with one mismatched door panel somebody found in a junkyard. Not exactly the ride of a billionaire heir. And that's exactly why I chose it. I don't need to be worshipped. I don't need to be envied. I don't even need to be liked. I just need to be normal, or at least look like I am. Most nights are quiet, the kind of quiet where the only sound on the roads is the low hum of streetlights and the occasional passing semi. Tonight was one of those nights. I had one more drop-off left, a box of custom spark plugs for a performance shop uptown. Then I'd hit the 24-hour diner for coffee and stale apple pie, head back to my rented basement unit, sleep until noon. Simple, peaceful, no drama. But life has a funny habit of choosing when to remind you who you are, even when you're trying your hardest to forget. I was headed along Harborview Parkway, a stretch of road that curves along the river, usually empty at this hour. Speed limit was 45, but I was going 38. No rush. Then headlights bright fast, too fast. I saw them in my rearview mirror, far back at first, then suddenly right on me. Whoever it was didn't even slow down. I instinctively eased right, giving them space to pass. They didn't. They rode my bumper so close I couldn't even see their headlights anymore, just the glare flooding through my back window. "All right," I muttered, "you win, go." I put on my blinker, edging further right to let them overtake. They swerved with me, staying behind. Then they flashed their brights repeatedly, like I was some kind of insect in their way. I gritted my teeth, this guy. Fine, I signaled again, pulled halfway onto the shoulder. And only then did they gun the engine and blast past on my left, with a roar so loud I felt it in my chest. It wasn't some average sedan. It was a 2024 Aston Martin Valkyrie, sleek, metallic silver carbon fiber spoiler, exhaust spitting blue flame. Price tag, probably $3 million. I let out a low whistle despite myself. Somebody's compensating. I expected it to disappear ahead, but nope. It swerved sharply in front of me, cutting so close I had to slam the brakes. My Honda jolted, tires squealing. Then the Aston slowed on purpose. What the hell? He was blocking me now, playing with me. I backed off, giving distance. He slowed more. I slowed more. Then we were crawling at 10 miles per hour in the middle of an empty road. Heart thudding, I glanced around. No cameras, no cops, no traffic. Just me and this guy. "All right, you wanna play?" I carefully switched lanes to pass. The Aston veered suddenly, clipping my front bumper. Metal scraped metal, sharp ripping. My car jolted sideways. I swerved hard to correct, but the right shoulder was still sandy from road repairs. My tires skidded. The entire world tilted. The Honda fishtailed. My grip slipped. My chest slammed into the seatbelt as the car spun. Then, crunch! The passenger side hit the guardrail, hard. I sat there breathless, knuckles white on the wheel. Then silence. Finally I exhaled. Airbags hadn't deployed. I wasn't bleeding. The engine was still running, humming like nothing happened. I could have sat there and collected myself. But before I could, I heard a car door slam. Then footsteps. Confident, slow, arrogant. The footsteps of someone who believed the whole world was his hallway. The figure appeared in front of my crumpled hood. Tall, blonde, perfect hair, designer leather jacket, beige chinos somehow spotless at 3 a.m. expensive watch glinting under streetlights. He didn't look pissed or apologetic. He looked annoyed, like I had inconvenienced him by existing. He approached my cracked window and tapped twice. I rolled it down. He leaned forward, sneering. "Are you blind or just poor?" That was the first thing he said to me. Not "Are you okay?" Not "I'm sorry," not even "What happened?" Nope. He went straight for insult. I stared at him through the half-open window. My heart was beating fast, but my voice came out steady. "You cut me off." He laughed, actually laughed. "Buddy, it's a public road. Maybe don't drive like a grandpa with cataracts next time." I opened the door slowly and stepped out, brushing glass dust from my sleeve. He stepped back slightly, like my existence might contaminate him. Up close, he was even more polished. His jaw was square and clean-shaven. His eyes were an icy blue that looked like they'd never seen struggle. Behind him, the Aston Martin idled loudly, its lights still glaring across the highway. The license plate read Mr. Mercer. Of course. He straightened his perfectly tailored jacket. "I'm Brandon Mercer, by the way. Maybe you've seen my father's name on half the buildings around town." I resisted the urge to laugh. I did know his father, knew his face from charity galas when I was a kid, knew his company's financial records, knew how much Hale Industries bailaid him out once during a bad quarter, but he didn't know I knew any of that. To him, I was just some nobody in a junk car. I kept my voice calm. "You hit me." "No," he said, smirking. "You accelerated into me, probably trying to get an insurance payday, huh? People like you always do." People like me. There it was again. Before I could respond, I heard another car door shut. I looked past him and saw her. She emerged from the passenger side of the Aston like she was stepping onto a red carpet. High ponytail, glossy lips, white fur coat despite it being only mildly chilly. She didn't look concerned. She looked irritated at me. "Brandon," she called, her voice smooth but sharp. "What's taking so long?" He rolled his eyes. "Some idiot crashed into us." She approached, heels clacking dramatically on pavement. Up close I could smell her perfume, sweet, overpowering, the kind that tried to prove wealth through scent alone. She looked me up and down, my scuffed boots, my oil-stained jacket, my messy hair. Then she made a face like she'd just smelled trash. "Seriously, this is who hit us." Brandon nodded proudly. "Guy thinks it's my fault." She scoffed. "Unbelievable, you should sue him." I stared at both of them. For a moment I wondered, could I just walk away, let insurance sort it, avoid conflict? Then Brandon stepped closer, too close. "And just so we're clear," he said, lowering his voice, "you're paying for the damages." I blinked. "Excuse me." He pointed at his bumper. A barely visible scuff mark sat there, hardly noticeable. "You scratched a $3 million hypercar." I glanced at his pristine bumper, then back at my destroyed passenger door, crushed like a soda can. "You rammed me into a guardrail," I said slowly. He shrugged. "Prove it." I clenched my jaw. He wasn't just arrogant, he was dangerous. the kind of person who believed money equaled immunity. Before I could answer, headlights appeared behind us. Another car pulled over. Not a police car, not a tow truck, but a black Lincoln Continental, tinted windows, chrome trim. My heart skipped. I recognized that car. Before Brandon could react, the driver's door opened, and a sharply dressed older woman stepped out, heels clicking with precision. Black blazer, silk blouse, hair in a tight bun, expression controlled but alert. Miranda Kessler, my family's longtime personal assistant. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't ever supposed to be near me when I was off-grid. Yet there she was. She approached calmly, first assessing the damage, then me. Her eyes flicked quickly from my face to the wrecked Honda, then to the Aston, then to Brandon and his girlfriend. "Ethan," she said softly, "are you harmed?" Brandon scoffed. "Who the hell are you, his mom?" Miranda didn't even look at him. She kept her gaze locked on me. "I saw your GPS location jump rapidly. I assumed a collision." I swallowed hard. "I'm fine." She looked at the dented metal. "You are not fine." Brandon stepped between us. "Hey, lady, this is between me and Mr. Junkyard here." Miranda turned to him slowly, and I saw it, that glint in her eye. The one people in our world got when they saw someone who didn't know how outmatched they were. A calm, deadly kind of amusement. And when she spoke, her voice was soft but surgical. "And you are?" Brandon lifted his chin. "Brandon Mercer, maybe you've heard of me." Miranda stared at him for a beat. Then she said, "No." Miranda's response, a single flat no, hung in the air like a slap. Brandon blinked, confused, as if the idea of someone not recognizing his name was physically painful. His fiancée, I could now see the engagement ring on her finger, large enough to double as a weapon, stepped forward with a snide smile. "You must not be from around here," she said, voice dripping superiority. "Brandon's father is Gregory Mercer, Mercer Holdings, Mercer Stadium, Mercer Pavilion, ringing a bell now." Miranda regarded her calmly. Buildings named after men are rarely owned by them. Ava Mercer faltered. Brandon recovered first, scoffing. "All right, enough, you," he jabbed a finger toward me. "Owe me your insurance info now." Miranda didn't move. "Ethan, get back in your car." I frowned. "Miranda." "Get in the car." Her voice was quiet, but the kind that commanded without raising volume. I hesitated, not because I feared Brandon, but because I feared what Miranda might do if I disobeyed. She was technically just an assistant, but she'd been in my family's inner circle for years. I'd seen her dismantle CEOs with a smile. I'd seen her outmaneuver attorneys twice her age. Hell, I'd once seen her make my father apologize. So I obeyed but kept the window down. Brandon threw his hands up. "So that's how it is. You're hiding behind your secretary." Miranda turned to him slowly. "I am not a secretary," she said. "I am an executive liaison for Hale Industries." Brandon froze. The name hit him, not because he recognized me, but because everyone in Riverton recognized the Hale name. Miranda waited a beat, then delivered the kill shot. "Legally speaking, that makes me an authorized representative of Hale family assets." She tilted her head toward my busted Civic. "That includes him." Ava burst out laughing. "You're joking. That," she pointed at me like I was gum on a shoe, "is a Hale." Miranda didn't look at her. She looked at Brandon. "That man," she said with perfect clarity, "is worth more than everyone in your contact list combined." The silence that followed was heavy. Brandon's confidence faltered, not entirely, but visibly. For the first time, he looked between me and Miranda like he wasn't quite sure what he was standing in. I met his eyes through the window. He didn't see anger in mine. He saw restraint, and that rattled him. Before anyone could speak again, headlights appeared. Another car pulled in behind Miranda's Lincoln. A maroon pickup truck. An older man in a work jacket stepped out, gray beard, tired eyes, reflective vest still on. A city maintenance worker, probably heading home from a night shift. He took one look at the scene, the wrecked Honda, the pristine supercar, the suits, and sighed. Everybody okay here? Brandon recovered his tone instantly and strode toward him like he owned the pavement. Yeah, he said, gesturing dismissively toward my car. This idiot tried to kill us. Good thing my reflexes are sharp or we'd be dead. The older man looked past him at my crushed door, then back at Brandon. His expression flattened. Son, he said slowly, that car is halfway inside that guardrail. Don't seem like he was the aggressor. Brandon bristled. You weren't here. The man shrugged. Nope, but I ain't blind. Miranda stepped forward. Sir, are you able to provide your name, in case a police report is needed? Brandon stiffened. Police? No police we don't need. The worker narrowed his eyes. Why, you got something to hide, hotshot. Ava scoffed. We don't call cops for fender benders. The worker folded his arms. Lady, that ain't no fender bender. Miranda nodded. In fact, under Civil Code 133.7, leaving a non-consensual accident scene involving injury or significant damage can be considered a hit and run. Ava rolled her eyes. Nobody's injured. Miranda didn't look away from Brandon. Ethan. I caught on. I rubbed my shoulder slowly. Next tight, I said with a faint grimace. Might be whiplash. Miranda nodded. Documented. Brandon looked like someone had swapped his champagne for vinegar. Okay, he snapped. Fine, call your lawyers, call the cops, whatever, we'll handle this the right way. He marched to his car, yanking open the driver door, muttering curses under his breath. Ava followed, but not before glaring at me one last time. You'll regret this. Then she got in. The Veston's engine roared. For a moment, I thought they'd flee. But then Brandon rolled down his window and snarled, We're not running. We're getting a witness. Then they sped off. Miranda waited until the taillights vanished. Then she turned to me. You're going to the hospital. I'm fine. She raised an eyebrow. I didn't ask. Then she exhaled, and for just a moment, her composure slipped. Ethan, she said quietly, do you understand what's just been set in motion? I frowned. A car accident. She shook her head slowly. No. Her gaze followed the empty road. That man doesn't know who you are. She looked back at me, stern now. But by tomorrow. She paused. He will. Miranda insisted on driving me to the hospital, even though I kept assuring her I wasn't hurt. She didn't believe me. Or rather, she believed me but believed protocol more. And Miranda Kessler was a woman ruled by protocol. I rode in the back of the Lincoln like a kid caught sneaking out past curfew. She called ahead to St. Luke's Memorial, the kind of hospital that sees more bar fights and allergic reactions than high-profile lawsuits. The receptionist must have expected an average patient, until she heard Miranda utter 5 words in that calm, measured voice. It's regarding Ethan Hale. Prepare an incident intake. Suddenly, the hospital wasn't just open, it was alert. When we arrived, 2 nurses were already waiting with a wheelchair, even though I insisted on walking. Miranda gave me a stare that said, sit, and I did. Funny how I could shrug off a millionaire bully, but a 5'6" assistant with a clipboard made me fold in seconds. The intake process took 15 minutes. Physical exam, reflex checks, cervical press test, results, mild muscle strain, possible delayed soreness. Translation, legally usable whiplash. Miranda nodded approvingly. While the nurse printed discharge papers, I finally asked her the question gnawing at me. Why were you even near Harborview Parkway? She didn't look up from her tablet. Because I track your location. I blinked. You what? She finally met my eyes, discreetly, at a distance, as advised by your father. I stared at her. I told you I didn't want anyone shadowing me. You didn't want a bodyguard, she corrected. You never said anything about GPS oversight. I opened my mouth to argue. Then I shut it. Because the truth was, if she hadn't shown up, I might have lost control of that situation. Brandon would have spun his version. Ava would have giggled through lies. A battered Civic versus a pristine Aston. Police might have leaned toward the pretty couple in silk and chrome. Before I could reply, Miranda's phone buzzed. She answered instantly, Kessler. She listened in silence for 3 seconds. Then her eyes hardened. Understood, patch him through. She tapped her earpiece and then looked at me. It's your father. I stiffened. I hadn't spoken to Richard Hale in 6 months, by choice. Miranda raised her brows. Answer. I exhaled sharply, put him on. She handed me the phone. I lifted it to my ear. Ethan. His voice was rough, deep, tired, like gravel under pressure. Hey, I said flat. Miranda turned her back, giving privacy in the way only trained professionals do, where they hear every word but pretend otherwise. There was a pause. I received footage, my father said. What footage? Dashcam from your car. I blinked. My car doesn't have. I installed one, he said firmly, quietly, months ago. I clenched my jaw. Of course you did. Another pause. I watched it. I said nothing. Finally, he spoke again. Was he harmed? I paused, thrown off. Who? The man who hit you. No. Shame, he muttered quietly. I blinked again. Richard Hale was not a man prone to profanity or theatrics, but when anger surfaced it was cold, controlled, weaponized. His name is Brandon Mercer, I said, Gregory Mercer's son. I know, my father replied instantly. I expected him to suggest legal retaliation. I expected him to demand I return home. I expected him to scold me for driving alone without escort. Instead, he said 4 words. Leave him to me. My stomach tightened, not with excitement but unease. I didn't respond. He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. He simply said, go home, rest, I'll handle the rest. Then he hung up. I stared at the phone. Miranda turned back. Well, she asked softly. I swallowed. He knows. She nodded slowly. He would. I rubbed my forehead. Miranda, don't let him do something stupid. She stared at me. Define stupid. We left the hospital around 4 a.m. Miranda drove me back to my apartment, but when I stepped out, she didn't follow. She rolled down the passenger window instead. Ethan, she said plainly, sleep, turn your phone on loud, there will be activity. I frowned. What kind? She paused, then said the one thing that made me realize things were about to escalate beyond control. The Mercers woke up the wrong sleeping dragon. I didn't sleep. Not because I wasn't tired, I was exhausted, but because Miranda's words echoed in my head like a warning siren. There will be activity. What kind of activity? Legal, financial, social, physical. With my father, it could be any of the above, or all of them. By 7 a.m., the sun barely rising, my phone buzzed. Group chat, Carlisle Auto and Hardware night shift. Lenny, bro, PLS tell me that's not you trending on Facebook right now. Jess, did you good? Saw your Civic on a meme page, Elmau. Lenny, FB link. Broke guy crashes into 3M hypercar and cries poor skull. My chest tightened. I opened the link, and there it was. A grainy nighttime photo of my Civic wedged into the guardrail, the Aston in front undamaged, me standing beside it head down, back turned, while Brandon stood tall, hands on hips like some heroic victim. Ava beside him, hand on his arm, face full of concern. Caption: Some broke loser tried to scam this couple for money. Luckily the guy swerved and saved them. People are ridiculous. Thousands of likes, shares, laugh reacts, comments. Typical, they see a nice car and try to get a payout. Hope they arrested that Honda driver. If you can't handle the road, stay home. None of them knew the truth, and I couldn't defend myself without revealing who I was. My hands tightened around my phone. A notification popped up. New message, unknown number. Damage control, they moved first, Miranda. Before I could respond, another message from another unknown number. Ethan, do not respond publicly. My father. Another message followed immediately. Watch. A chill ran up my spine. 10 minutes later, the internet shifted. New posts began appearing. Same accident photo, but from another angle, a different car visible in the distance. Then a short clip appeared. A phone video. This time, not taken by Brandon. Taken by the maintenance worker. He must have filmed while Brandon yelled at me near the guardrail. In this clip, Brandon's voice was crystal clear. This idiot crashed into us. Good thing my reflexes are sharp or we'd be dead. Then my voice faint, calm. You cut me off. Then Brandon again, laughing. Maybe don't drive like a grandpa with cataracts next time. No mistaking the contempt. It spread across platforms like wildfire. And this time, the tone of the comments changed. Wait, the rich dude sounds like a total dick. Guy in the Honda didn't even yell back. I'd bet money the Aston guy caused it. Post the full video, don't protect that douche. The narrative flipped. But that wasn't the biggest shift. Because then came a third upload. A 30-second dashcam clip. From my car. Except I hadn't posted it. The footage showed everything. Me driving normally. The Aston flying up behind me. Tailgating, swerving, clipping me. Then the spin, the crash. Nothing was left to interpretation. The internet froze. Then exploded. I scrolled the tags. Mercer menace. Justice for Honda guy. Spoiled Brandon. Memes started pouring in. One showed Brandon's face photoshopped onto a toddler throwing a tantrum in front of a Hot Wheels car. One captioned, "When daddy buys you a $3 million car but not driving lessons." One just said, "L plus no skill plus bad driver plus you hit the proletariat." I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt uneasy. Because I hadn't posted that footage. Only one person could have. Richard Hale. My father had decided to step in publicly. My phone buzzed again. Miranda this time. The clip was leaked by anonymous sources. Official statement to follow. Official statement. From who? I didn't have to wonder long. Because at 8:14 a.m., a news alert flashed across my screen. Breaking. Hale Industries releases statement regarding Mercer collision. My pulse spiked. I opened it. And there it was. A polished, calculated corporate message. Hale Industries can confirm that the individual operating the Honda Civic in last night's collision with Brandon and Ava Mercer was Ethan Hale, son of CEO Richard Hale. Mr. Hale was driving of his own accord, without security or escort, when he was subjected to reckless endangerment by Mr. Mercer. We are grateful he was not seriously harmed. We expect full accountability from the Mercer family. I stared at the screen. Miranda hadn't exaggerated. The dragon wasn't waking up. It was already airborne. The internet was now split clean down the middle, half mocking Brandon, half waiting for the Mercers to respond. Because when billionaires get publicly called out, it's never over after one statement. It becomes war. By 9 a.m., I was packing my apartment. No TV on, no music, just silence and the dull ache creeping into my neck and shoulder from the crash. That's when my phone buzzed again, this time with a call from an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Ethan Hale, a deep voice said smoothly, confident, older, controlled. Not my father. Gregory Mercer. Brandon's father. The man who built half of Riverton's skyline and leased the other half from my father's construction steel. He didn't waste time on small talk. First, I want to apologize on behalf of my son, he said. His tone was polished, like every syllable had been pre-checked by a PR team. Brandon made a profoundly stupid mistake. I stayed silent. He continued. I understand your father chose to escalate this matter publicly. He has every right to. But I'd prefer we resolve this privately before further spectacle damages both our families. Ah, there it was. This wasn't personal remorse. This was damage containment. I finally spoke. You should talk to my father. Gregory let out a soft chuckle, not quite mocking but close. Oh, I fully intend to. In fact, I expect we'll be speaking shortly. But before that, I wanted to speak to you directly. A pause. I reviewed the footage. Brandon was reckless. I won't defend him. Another pause, tighter this time. But understand this, Ethan. The internet may think this is a David and Goliath story, but in reality, there are two Goliaths here. And when giants fight, the crowd cheers until buildings start falling. I understood the threat. He wasn't threatening me, not directly. He was warning me about what our fathers might become if unleashed on one another. I was silent too long, apparently. Gregory continued. I propose a meeting. Tonight, neutral ground, my residence. You, me, our fathers clear the air before this turns nuclear. I didn't answer immediately. Because something felt off. If Gregory was trying to de-escalate, why did his voice still hold that undertone of control? Like even now, he believed he was the one calling the shots. Finally I said, I'll think about it. He exhaled softly. Please do, for both our sakes. Then he hung up. Seconds later, my phone buzzed again. Miranda. She didn't bother with greetings. You answered, didn't you? Yeah. When? Just now. She muttered something under her breath. He moved faster than expected. Did you know he'd call? Yes, I also know you will not be attending that meeting. I frowned, shouldn't I? She didn't respond right away. Then, did he sound desperate? I thought back, no, calculated. Exactly. I waited. Finally she said, Gregory Mercer isn't trying to negotiate. He's trying to contain you, to get you in a room before your father decides how far he's willing to go. And how far is he willing to go? Silence. Then, you should ask him. By noon, Riverton's social media feeds were nothing but news clips, commentary, amateur analysis, memes and interview requests involving the Mercers and the Hales. People were taking sides. Hashtags were trending. But I wasn't thinking about the public anymore. I was thinking about one question. What will my father do? I didn't wait for him to answer that through the news. I went to get my answer in person. 2 hours later, I stood outside Hale Industries Tower. The tallest building in Riverton, glass and steel, my father's empire in vertical form. I hadn't walked through those doors in over a year. But security didn't stop me. They stood aside. As I ascended in the executive elevator, my own reflection stared back at me in the chrome paneling. Disheveled hair, faded jacket, bandage on my neck. Not the image of an heir. But today I didn't care. The elevator reached floor 87. The top. The doors opened. A long corridor stretched ahead, marble floor, glass walls overlooking the entire city. At the end, double doors of dark wood. My father's office. I walked toward them. Before I could knock, they opened. And there he was. Tall, broad-shouldered, silver hair perfectly combed, black suit pressed to military precision. Richard Hale. He didn't smile, he didn't frown. He simply said, "Come in." I entered. He closed the doors behind me. For a moment, silence. Then he spoke without turning. "If Gregory Mercer wants a meeting." He turned toward me, a storm brewing in his eyes. "Then we'll host it here." My father didn't pace. He didn't posture. He didn't breathe any louder than usual. But every movement radiated precision, like a man who had already played out every possible outcome in his head. "This won't be a conversation," he said, moving toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Riverton. "It will be a negotiation of power, and I intend to leave no doubt as to who holds more of it." I swallowed. Should I be there? He turned slowly, then nodded. "You started this," he said bluntly. "Now you'll finish it." I expected him to lecture me, to tell me I was careless, to remind me of how my actions reflect on the family. Instead, he simply said, "You handled yourself with restraint. I'm proud of that." That hit harder than any reprimand could have. Before I could react, he added, "But understand, from today on, restraint is no longer required." 6:30 p.m. The transition floor beneath my father's office, floor 86, had been transformed. Long conference table, polished obsidian, 24 chairs but only 4 prepared with water, leather folios, and pens. 4 people. Me, my father, Gregory Mercer, his son. Except there were 6 seats. I turned to Miranda, who was quietly overseeing final preparations like an unseen general. "Who are the extras for?" She didn't look up from her tablet. "Gregory is bringing legal counsel. Your father invited no one." "And the 6th? She paused, then smirked. "You'll see." 6:58 p.m. The elevator chimed. Every security guard on the floor subtly straightened. The doors opened. Gregory Mercer stepped out, impeccably dressed. Behind him, a sharp-looking man in his 30s with silver-framed glasses and a briefcase. Lawyer. And trailing behind them, uncharacteristically quiet, Brandon. He looked different. Hair combed back, expensive suit. No smirk, no swagger, just tension. He kept his eyes forward, pointedly not looking at me. My father didn't rise when they approached. Gregory did. "Richard," he said, extending a hand. My father waited just long enough to show dominance, then shook it. "Gregory." They sat. I took my place beside my father. Brandon across from me. No one spoke for several seconds. Then, before the 2 patriarchs could begin, a second elevator chimed. Everyone turned. The doors opened. And she walked out. Blonde hair in perfect waves, designer blazer, heels clicking as she approached with absolute confidence. Sierra Blackwood. Brandon's girlfriend. The influencer. Gregory's face tightened. Brandon looked like someone had just thrown a grenade under his chair. She didn't look at either of them. She looked at me. Then said clearly, "Hope I'm not late," and sat. At our side of the table. Silence. Even my father, master of composure, raised a brow. Gregory finally spoke. "Sierra, what exactly are you doing?" She leaned back casually. "Leaving a brand before it sinks." Brandon looked like he'd been slapped. "You can't be serious." She turned, and her voice lost every trace of softness. "Do you have any idea how much heat I took for defending you online? How many sponsors paused contracts? How many fans called me complicit?" He stared. She continued. "You hit a guy with your car, called him trash, then cried cancel culture when it backfired. I didn't sign up to be the first lady of liability." My father almost smiled. Gregory looked ready to combust. "Ms. Blackwood," he said with icy calm, "this is a private corporate matter." She nodded politely. "Oh, I know. That's why I'm not here as your PR problem." She gestured toward me. "I'm here as a witness." My father leaned back. Spoke for the first time since sitting. "Now that everyone is assembled," he said evenly, "let's begin." Gregory's lawyer opened a folder. "We are prepared to offer a full public apology, monetary damages, and—" My father raised a hand. "I'm not interested in money." Gregory paused. "Then what are you interested in?" My father looked directly at Brandon. "Then, I want accountability." And here is where everything took a turn none of us saw coming. Because before anyone else could react, I spoke, loud enough to stop the air. "I don't want an apology," I said. Everyone turned. My father gave me a warning glance. But I continued. "I don't want money. I don't even want revenge." I turned to Brandon. "I want you to work for me." There was dead silence. Brandon looked like he'd misheard. "What? You think people like me coast through life? That money makes us soft." I leaned forward. "So I want you to see what real responsibility looks like." His jaw clenched. "You want me to be your servant?" "No," I said calmly. "I want you to earn back your humanity." Everyone stared at me. Then slowly, unbelievably, my father nodded. "Approved." Brandon stared at me like I'd spoken another language. You can't be serious." I didn't break eye contact, dead serious. Gregory leaned forward, voice low with warning. "Richard, I hope you understand the legal implications." But my father cut him off. "This isn't legal, this is personal." Gregory's lawyer looked between us, utterly confused. "Excuse me, but what exactly is being proposed here?" I folded my hands. "Simple, clear. Brandon Mercer will work under Hale Industries, not as an executive, not in an office, and definitely not in anything cushy. He'll be assigned to whatever department Miranda chooses." I glanced at her. She smiled faintly. "And he'll remain there for 1 full year. No media privileges, no special treatment, regular workforce salary. The kind of life he thinks is beneath him." Brandon exploded. "Absolutely not." My father spoke then, calm, deliberate. "Your other option," he said, "is to face criminal charges for reckless endangerment, public harassment, and obstruction." Gregory snapped his head toward him. "We agreed this would not become legal warfare." "No," my father said, "you assumed it wouldn't." Silence. A deep one. I could practically feel the scales tipping. Gregory turned toward his son, not with concern but with fury. "Do you have any idea the position you've put this family in?" Brandon looked stunned, like his own father siding against him had never been conceivable. He opened his mouth to argue, but another voice spoke before he could. "Sierra." Her tone was light, casual, but her eyes were sharp. "I actually think it's a great idea." Brandon whipped around. "You stay out of this." She ignored him, instead addressing my father. If Brandon works here, his every move will be watched. No more hiding behind fake PR statements or handlers. People love a redemption arc if it's real. Gregory's lawyer, now more lost than ever, muttered, "Is this standard settlement procedure?" My father didn't answer him. Instead, he looked at Brandon. "Decide." Brandon's nostrils flared. He looked at his father. Gregory didn't speak. He didn't defend him. He didn't save him. He just stared back with cold, calculated disappointment. Finally, Brandon sat back and said through gritted teeth, "Fine." My father nodded once, then stood. "Good, report to Miranda tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Brandon nearly choked. You're free to be late," Miranda said, smiling politely. "It'll just go in your record." Gregory slowly stood as well, face unreadable. "Richard," he said quietly, "you've made your point." My father met his gaze. "No," he said, "this isn't my point, it's his." He motioned to me. Gregory hesitated. Then, to everyone's surprise, nodded in acknowledgement, as if recognizing the inevitable changing of guard. He turned. "Come on, Brandon." But Brandon didn't move. Gregory paused. I said, "I'll meet you downstairs," Brandon muttered, not looking at him. They left. Silence hung over the room, but not tense anymore. Looser, clearer. I exhaled slowly. My father glanced at me, something like pride in his eyes, but said nothing. He simply patted my shoulder once, then exited. Only two people remained at the table. Me and Sierra. She looked at me with an unreadable expression, then said, "You know." She smirked, leaning back in her chair. "I didn't switch sides because I like you." I raised a brow. "No." "No," her smirk widened. "I switched sides because..." She stood, leaning in close. "There's more story here, and I don't miss good stories." She winked and walked away, leaving me with a bizarre, unsettling thought. I had just drafted my own redemption plan, but someone else might be planning their own angle within it. 5:12 a.m. My alarm went off. Even though I wasn't required to be anywhere that early, I woke up anyway. Couldn't help it. Something about knowing Brandon Mercer, former king of rooftop parties and champagne stories, was about to experience his first day as a blue-collar employee under our roof. Well, let's just say I wanted a front row seat. I arrived at the south loading bay of Hale Industries before sunrise, not the main entrance, not the executive lobby, the loading dock. A place Brandon had probably never seen in his life. The sky was still a dull purple, the air sharp with early morning chill. Workers were already gathering, steel-toe boots, neon vests, thermoses in hand. I stayed in the shadows near a forklift, hands in pockets, hoodie up. Then at 5:58 a.m., a sleek black Mercedes pulled up. Rear passenger door opened, and out stepped Brandon. Hair messy, wrinkled polo shirt, somewhere between hangover and shell shock. He looked around and realized he wasn't here for some performative PR breakfast. He was in the trenches. Miranda appeared behind him, clipboard in one hand, coffee in the other. "Good morning, Brandon," she said cheerfully. "You're 2 minutes early, I'm impressed." He straightened, trying to recover some dignity. "Where am I assigned?" She flipped a page. "Sanitation and materials management." His face dropped. "Garbage duty," he said flatly. "Recycling and hazardous sortation," she corrected. "You'll be shadowing manual operations supervisor Luis Ortega." As if summoned, a broad-shouldered man in his 40s approached, dark beard, hands calloused, calm eyes. He looked Brandon up and down, then said, You ever sort industrial waste before? Brandon blinked. No. Lewis nodded slowly. Good, then no bad habits to unlearn. I nearly laughed out loud. But the best part, Brandon still didn't know I was watching. Miranda did, though. As Brandon followed Lewis toward the sorting area, she looked straight at me across the loading bay. Gave the faintest nod. I nodded back. Alliance confirmed. Hours later, I watched from an upper mezzanine walkway as Brandon shoveled shredded insulation into color-coded bins under Lewis's supervision. Sweat-soaked, face twisted with annoyance and disbelief. Lewis kept calmly giving directions while chewing gum like this was Tuesday, because it was. I lingered for maybe 15 minutes before deciding I'd seen enough. On my way down the stairs, someone blocked me. Sierra, leaning against the railing, holding an iced latte. She smirked, enjoying the show. You're here early, I said. Content research, she replied dryly. Don't worry, I'm not filming yet. I stared at her. You really planning on making entertainment out of this? She grinned. Ethan, everything's entertainment if you package it right. And if I tell you to back off? Her eyes softened just a bit. I won't humiliate him, she said, but I won't protect him either. I exhaled, fair. Then she tilted her head. But the real question is. She leaned closer. When are you going down there? I frowned. What? You're the one who sentenced him, she said, but so far you're just watching. She paused. You want him to change, or you just want to feel powerful? That hit harder than I expected. She turned away. Let me know when you figure it out. Then walked off. I stood there alone, watching Brandon struggle below. And for the first time, I wondered if I had any right to judge him from above. I went home that night later than I expected. I showered, ate leftovers without tasting them, scrolled social media without absorbing a word. Every comment thread was still ablaze with speculation. Mercer down versus trust fund tyranny. This is rich people role-playing morality. He'll last a week before crying to daddy. Let them fight. But Sierra's words stuck in my head louder than all of it. You want him to change, or you just want to feel powerful? I hated how much that got under my skin. Because the truth, I hadn't decided. And that made me no better than him. Next morning, 5 a.m. I didn't even set an alarm this time. I was already awake. I threw on work jeans, steel boots, hoodie. And instead of heading through the executive lobby, I went straight to the loading bay. No one expected me there. Least of all Brandon. The place smelled like diesel, metal, sweat. Forklifts beeped, trash compactors groaned. Lewis was already on shift, clipboard in hand. He spotted me first. Jerking his chin slightly, approval, acknowledgement, hard to tell. Then Brandon turned. And froze. He looked rougher today. Half-lidded eyes, hands blistered, shirt stained, a bruise on his forearm from something heavy catching him. His mouth curled. Oh, you're here to watch again. I didn't answer. I walked straight past him and grabbed a pair of thick gloves off the supply rack. Then I stepped beside him at the conveyor. Lewis didn't say a word. He just observed. Brandon stared at me, confused, annoyed, suspicious. Finally, what do you think you're doing? I shrugged. Sorting insulation. He snorted. You think this impresses anyone? Nope. He glared. Then why? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I flicked a chunk of fiberglass into the yellow bin, heard it crunch. Then said simply, because if I'm going to judge you, I'm not doing it from the balcony. For a moment, he didn't know how to respond. Then his jaw clenched. He turned back to his pile. We worked in silence, side by side, for 40 straight minutes. Not speaking, not competing, just shoveling, tossing, inhaling dust and humility. Finally, Lewis blew a whistle. Water break. Brandon stumbled back, wiping his forehead. I leaned against a railing, catching my breath. He didn't look at me, but he spoke. Low. Bruised ego dampened but not gone. You think this makes you noble or something? I exhaled. No. He looked at me then, confused. I continued. It makes me accountable. He blinked. For what? For deciding what to do with you. He stared longer this time. Then scoffed. You really think this is going to make me, what, a better man? I didn't sugarcoat it. I don't know. He waited. But I think I'd rather try this than watch you become worse. He didn't reply. But he didn't walk away either. And that weirdly felt like progress. That's when we heard a loud metallic thud behind us. Then yelling. Lewis spun toward the source and cursed under his breath. 3 workers sprinted past us toward the far side of the loading dock. Brandon and I exchanged glances. Then followed. Vast. As we rounded the line of compactors, we saw it. A hydraulic lift, massive, loaded with metal debris, had jammed halfway and was now tipping. A worker, young guy, maybe 20, was trapped behind it, pinned between the lift arm and a crate. His face was twisted in pain, breath shallow. The machinery groaned louder, metal warping under stress. We need to get this off HIM. 2 workers pushed at the lift, no effect. Lewis shouted orders, kill the hydraulic now. Someone ran for the emergency shutoff. But it was too far. Not fast enough. The arm groaned again, sliding further. The kid screamed. And then Brandon moved. No hesitation. He sprinted toward the lift, wedged his shoulder under the arm, and pushed with everything he had. Insane. Stupid. And absolutely the only thing that might buy time. I didn't think. I just joined him. My shoulder shoved against iron. Pain shot through my spine. Metal dug into bone. But between us, we slowed it. Just enough. Long enough. Click. The main shutoff engaged. The hydraulics hissed to a stop. Lewis and 2 others rushed to free the worker, dragging him clear. Paramedics were called. Chaos simmered down. And only then did Brandon and I step back. Breathing hard. Covered in grease. Shoulders shaking from adrenaline. No one said anything for a full 10 seconds. Then Lewis walked up, looked at Brandon, and extended his hand. Firm. Grateful. Respectful. Brandon looked stunned. Then, slowly, he shook it. I watched his face, and I saw something change. Not dramatic, not cinematic. Just a crack. A fracture. In something rot he'd been holding onto for years. By noon, word had already spread through the entire floor. Not about me joining the shift. Not about how I held the lift. But about Brandon. The golden boy, the spoiled heir, the viral menace. Had thrown himself into danger to save a guy he didn't even know. And workers talked. Not with praise. Not with mockery. With something more dangerous. Curiosity. After the injured worker was taken away, conscious, stable, swearing he'd be fine, the day slowed down. The emergency adrenaline faded. Lewis sent everyone on extended break so maintenance could inspect the equipment. Brandon and I sat against a concrete pillar, water bottles in hand. We didn't talk. Not at first. Until. You pushed harder than me, he muttered. I glanced at him, wasn't keeping score. He nodded. Then, thanks. Before I could respond, a shadow fell across us. A camera clicked. We both snapped our heads up. Standing there with a DSLR in hand, casually framing a shot like she was photographing wildlife. Sierra. I groaned seriously. She smirked. Relax, I'm not posting anything, yet. Brandon scowled. Delete it. She pretended not to hear him. You know, Brandon, you looked good back there. He blinked. Good. She crouched down, lens hanging loosely around her neck. Yeah, sweaty, scared, human. He scoffed. You think I did that for optics? No, she tilted her head, which is exactly why it matters. Brandon stared at her, caught between annoyance and vulnerability. Finally, he muttered, Why are you even here? She didn't answer immediately. Then, because I needed to know if you were worth betting on. Silence. You could practically see Brandon freeze. He wasn't used to people testing him, just as he wasn't used to passing. She stood, then turned to me. You too, Hale. I raised a brow. Me. She smirked. Don't act like you're some noble martyr. You came down here to teach him a lesson. I opened my mouth to protest. She shut it down with a raised finger. But you learned one instead. I closed my mouth. Because she was right. Damn her. She took one last photo without asking, then walked away toward the exit. But as she left, she tossed one more line over her shoulder. You two are a story, you just don't know what kind yet. And then, she was gone. Later that evening, I was back at Hale Tower. Called upstairs. Not by Miranda. By my father. His office, dark wood, dim lights, full skyline in view. He was standing by the window when I entered. Didn't turn. Just said, I heard you were on the loading floor today. His voice was unreadable. Not angry. Not proud. I waited. Finally, he spoke again. Why? I could have lied. Could have said it was strategy. Could have said I was testing Brandon. Could have said Miranda advised it. Instead, I needed to know if what I'm doing is right. He turned then, studied me for a long moment. Then, to my surprise, he exhaled, sat down, and gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. I did. Then he said something I never expected to hear from him. Something I didn't even think he was capable of saying. When I was your age, I judged men without understanding them. Only from the top, never from beside. Slowly, he folded his hands, looked me straight in the eye. I'm glad you didn't become me. I didn't know what to say. So I didn't. He stood, an unspoken signal that the moment, whatever that was over. But before I reached the door, he added, Keep going. I paused. Then he clarified, Finish what you started. I nodded once, and left, for the first time, feeling like I wasn't just fighting someone else's legacy. I was writing my own. That night, while the city wound down, someone else lit a fuse. 8:47 p.m. I was at home, half watching some mindless documentary when my phone buzzed. 30+ notifications. Group chats. Mentions. News alerts. I frowned, opened one. Then my stomach dropped. On Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok, photos were spreading. Not of the accident, not of the press conference, but of earlier that day. Me and Brandon, side by side, covered in grease, shoving our shoulders under that tilting lift. One shot in particular, taken from an upper platform, looked like something straight out of a crisis documentary. Captioned, "When Privilege Meets Purpose." Another with, "Enemies yesterday, teammates today." And the one that really made it viral. "This ain't PR, that's instinct." I immediately called the one person who had those shots. She picked up on the second ring. "Before you ask," Sierra said, "I didn't post them." "Then who?" "Check the watermark." She hung up. I zoomed in. A subtle logo in the bottom corner. At RIVRTON Uncensored. A known local account, part gossip archivist, part activist watchdog, part digital pot stirrer. Someone had seen us. Someone else had posted it. Elsewhere in the city. In a penthouse where the lights were always too bright. Brandon Mercer stared at his own phone, jaw tight. Across from him at a dinner table set for two, his father watched. Gregory Mercer was cutting into his steak when he said, without looking up, "Quite the performance you gave today." Brandon's head snapped up. "Performance?" Gregory set his fork down. "You threw yourself under industrial machinery with no protective gear. If it had slipped further, you'd have snapped your spine." Brandon glared. "You prefer I let someone else die?" Gregory remained cold. "I'd prefer you develop discipline. Heroism without restraint is recklessness in disguise." Brandon scoffed. "You really going to spin saving a guy's life into a flaw?" Gregory leaned back. Voice softer now. "More dangerous. I'm going to spin nothing. I'm going to wait, because this sudden humility of yours, I don't believe it." Brandon clenched his teeth. "Believe what you want." Gregory stared at him long and hard. Then said quietly, "If you change, truly change, I'll respect that. But if you pretend, if this is just another mask, I'll know." Back at my place, I refreshed the feed again. Comments were spiraling. Mercer Redemption was trending. Some people still didn't buy it. Probably staged. Two billionaires cosplaying labor. Cool photo op, now put in 3 years. But many were surprised. I hate both their families, but that was real. You don't fake that kind of panic. If they keep this up, I might actually root for them. I sat there, reading, absorbing. Some people were watching for failure. Some were watching for growth. But either way, they were watching. Next morning, before sunrise again, I got dressed. Boots, gloves. Loading dock. This time, I wasn't hiding in shadows. I walked in bold. Lewis saw me. Nodded. Brandon saw me. Didn't react, just kept working. Until Sierra showed up. Not with a camera. Not with makeup. Just coffee. She handed one to me. Then after a beat, one to Brandon. He looked up at her. Surprised. Then took it. Slowly. No smirk. No attitude. Just a nod. "Thanks." She smiled faintly. "For the record," she said, "I still don't know if either of you are heroes." We both looked at her. She continued. "But at least." She looked around at the other workers, giving us side eyes and curious glances. "You're not spectators anymore." Then she walked off, leaning against a support beam and sipping her own cup. Watching. Not as a critic. Not as a cheerleader. But as a witness. As I turned back to the table of scrap to continue working, I realized something. This was no longer just a punishment. or a redemption arc, or a PR disaster. This was a test of him, of me, of whether we could become something more than what our last names stamped on us. If I ever thought fate had a sense of humor, this confirmed it. It was day 6 in the loading division. The early novelty of seeing $2 billion names hauling crates had mostly worn off. The workers no longer stared openly. They just gave us quick nods or the occasional grunt of approval when we didn't screw something up. Brandon, surprisingly, had adapted fast. He didn't complain anymore. He didn't bark orders. He just worked. Efficiently, quietly. Not out of joy, definitely not, but with a kind of determined stubbornness. The kind that said, if I'm doing this, I'm doing it right. Maybe that was respect. Or penance. Or ego in disguise. Didn't matter. It was growth. And then, just when I was starting to believe we'd survive this sentence without incident, disaster struck. We were in Section C, reorganizing a series of overhead roll racks stacked with sealed metal canisters. They were heavy, absurdly heavy, filled with industrial adhesives or some chemical mix I didn't fully understand. The racks were reinforced in theory. But theory doesn't always survive reality. I was guiding one of the canisters back into place on the top tier when I noticed it. A tiny high-pitched creak. Barely audible. But once you heard it, it didn't stop. I froze. Looked up. One of the brackets supporting the upper rack was bending. Not slightly. Not slowly. Actively. Straining. I felt a jolt of panic. "Hey," I shouted, "get CLEA." Snap. Not a small one. A sound so sharp and metallic it made everyone spin around. And then, the entire top row of canisters, hundreds of pounds each, began tilting forward. Right over my head. I didn't even have time to think. Only instinct. Run. Jump. Duck. But none of those worked because my foot, like some kind of sick joke, caught on a stray pallet board. I stumbled. Couldn't recover. And as I looked up, my balance gone, I saw 4 fully loaded steel canisters tipping toward me in one synchronized arc of doom. And then someone slammed into me from the side. A full-force tackle, knocking the wind out of me. We rolled across the concrete like 2 bowling pins as crash. The canisters hit exactly where I'd been standing. The sound was deafening. Workers yelled. Someone cursed loudly in Spanish. My ears were ringing as I blinked up, dazed, only to see Brandon Mercer pinning me to the ground. Breathing hard. Eyes wide. Not with arrogance. Not with adrenaline. With genuine terror. "Are you," he panted, voice raw, "are you trying to die every damn week?" I choked out a laugh that tasted like pure panic. Saving your life was supposed to be my thing. He stared for half a beat. Then smirked weakly. "Consider us even." But we were. Not even close. Because before the shock could even wear off, a voice cut through the chaos. "Who approved this storage stack?" We turned. It was Elias, my father's personal assistant. Usually calm, collected, in control. Right now, absolutely furious. He stormed past security tape, eyes locked on us. "Do you two have any idea the headlines I just prevented?" he snapped. "You not only almost died again, but if you had, we'd be facing OSHA violations, civil lawsuits, federal investigations." "Elias," I interrupted, still breathless, "chill." He turned that death glare on me. "I don't chill, I manage disasters. And you too," he pointed to me, then Brandon, "are walking press time bombs." But then, Brandon, of all people, stood up and said something I never expected. "This isn't your problem, it's mine." Elias blinked. "So I'll handle it." Brandon turned to the group of workers gathering around. "I'll stay late, fix the racks, reinforce them, whatever needs to be done." Lewis squinted at him. "You know how to weld?" "No," Brandon said plainly. "But I can learn." And that, right there, was the moment I realized something unmistakable. This wasn't PR anymore. It wasn't optics. Wasn't guilt. Wasn't rivalry. Something in Brandon Mercer had shifted. Not fully. Not perfectly. Not permanently. But enough that even Lewis crossed his arms and gave an approving grunt. "We'll show you." If someone had told me 2 weeks ago that I'd be eating reheated cafeteria lasagna in an employee break room with Brandon Mercer, I would have assumed I'd suffered a head injury. And yet there we were. Two disgraced rich boys in neon vests and steel-toe boots, sitting at a plastic table covered in energy drink cans and duct-taped salt shakers. Across the room, a cluster of workers kept glancing over at us like we were a weird wildlife documentary playing live. Lewis, of course, walked by and dropped a fork onto our table. "You look like toddlers sharing detention. At least eat before you start crying." Then he walked off without another word. I took a bite. It tasted like someone tried to season despair with oregano. We sat there in silence for a while. Not comfortable silence. Just tired. Finally, Brandon cleared his throat. "Earlier with the rack, I didn't." "Don't," I cut in. He blinked. "You didn't do it for me." He stared at me for a beat. Then nodded. "Yeah, I guess I didn't." We didn't say anything more. But that was enough. We were barely halfway through lunch when the breakroom door banged open. Everyone turned. And in walked Penelope, Brandon's girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, fiancé. I'd lost track. She looked like she'd stepped off the cover of Influencer Weekly. Designer boots, perfect hair, sunglasses indoors. She spotted us immediately, zeroed in, and stormed across the room like a guided missile. Workers parted for her like she was royalty. Or a live grenade. She stopped right in front of our table, took off her sunglasses. Her eyes locked onto Brandon. And she smiled. Not kindly. "Oh, there you are." Brandon didn't look surprised. Just resigned. "Penelope." She crossed her arms. "When I didn't hear from you for a week, I figured you were sulking in Lake Como or recovering from another bar fight. But this..." She looked around at the fluorescent lights, stained linoleum, vending machine humming sadly in the corner. "This is a creative new low." He didn't respond. She leaned in. "You're done playing construction cosplay. We're leaving." I expected him to get up. I really did. Even after everything, I assumed he'd crumble under this kind of pressure, the old world calling him back. But instead, he leaned back in his chair, picked up his fork, and calmly said, "No." Penelope blinked. "Excuse me. I'm not leaving." She scoffed. "You've made your point, you're tortured, you're misunderstood, Instagram's eating it up, but it's over." He didn't flinch. "I'm not done." Her smile vanished. She stared at him. Cold. Calculating. "So you're choosing this over me?" He finally looked up at her. Really looked. Quietly. Almost gently. "I'm choosing me over who I was with you." You could feel the entire room shift. Forks paused midair. Someone whispered, "Damn." Penelope stared at him like she couldn't process what she just heard. Then voice suddenly razor-thin. "So this is who you are now?" And then Brandon, with a calmness that honestly unnerved me, replied, "No. This is who I've been trying not to be my whole life." She stood there, silent, eyes narrowing, and then she turned sharply and walked toward the exit. But just before she reached the door, she stopped, and without looking back, she said something that made my blood run cold. "Fine, do your little blue-collar redemption arc. But just so you know, you're not the only one with footage of that night." And then she left. The room stayed silent long after she was gone. I turned to Brandon. "Footage?" He didn't answer. Didn't look at me. Just stared down at the table. Jaw clenched. Hands trembling slightly. And I understood. There was something about the crash he hadn't told me. Something worse than arrogance. Something dangerous. I didn't push Brandon right away. Whatever Penelope meant by "you're not the only one with footage of that night," it clearly hit something raw. He didn't shut down. He didn't deflect. He just went quiet. The kind of quiet that wasn't peace. It was containment. Lunch ended. We got back to work, tightening the rack supports with Lewis barking instructions like a drill sergeant. But every once in a while, I'd catch Brandon faltering. A pause that lingered too long. Eyes distant. Not distracted, haunted. After shift, I caught him before he could bolt. "Talk." He didn't answer. So I leaned in. "You kept calling me reckless for trying to fix things, but I didn't intend to hit you." He cut me off. Voice flat. Almost monotone. "But I did intend to scare you." I froze. He kept talking, staring at the ground. "That night when I clipped your car, it wasn't an accident. Not entirely." My fists clenched. He kept going. "I wasn't trying to crash you, but I was drunk, pissed. You cut me off. You flashed your lights and something in me just snapped." I stayed silent. He continued, voice steady but low. "I didn't see you as a person. I saw you as a challenge. I wanted to win, even if it meant risking someone else's life." He finally looked at me. Eyes raw. No excuses. No theatrics. "I didn't crash into you by fate. I chose to chase you. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't know if I wanted to yell or walk away." He took a breath. "And that's not what Penelope has footage of." I blinked. "What?" He looked around, making sure no one was close enough to hear. Then he said something I never expected. "I wasn't alone that night." The air shifted. I could feel where this was going before he said it. "I had a passenger," he said, "and that passenger had their phone out recording the whole thing." I swallowed. Hard. "Who?" He hesitated, then exhaled like it hurt. "My father." I reeled. "Gregory Mercer was filming you street racing." "Not racing," he said quietly, testing me. The words lodged in my brain like ice. "What?" He glanced away, then back, eyes steady. "He does that sometimes." "Sometimes." He nodded. Slowly. "When he thinks I'm getting soft, he'll put me in situations where I have to choose control or chaos, and he watches, keeps score." My voice came out before I could stop it. "That's not parenting, that's sadistic." He shrugged. Not dismissively, just tired. When you grow up in a house where love is conditional, you take whatever form it's offered in. We stood in silence. The factory around us buzzing with after-hours activity. Finally, I asked, "So what does the video show?" He swallowed. It shows me flooring it toward you, laughing. I felt sick. And it shows him in the passenger seat. Even sicker. And if it comes out, I finished for him. It won't just destroy you. He nodded. It'll prove your father egged you on. And everything goes nuclear. Before I could respond, Lewis yelled from across the floor. Hey rich boys, you done with your soap opera? We got more to weld. Bless that man. He had no idea he might have saved us from an emotional implosion. Brandon didn't look at me when he spoke next. I'll understand if you want to walk away. I didn't respond immediately. Then I said, I'm not walking away, but I'm not letting that stay buried either. He tensed. I'm not saying we release it, I clarified. But if your father tries to spin this or Penelope tries to leak it first, we call the shots, not them. He looked at me. Really looked. Then he nodded. Slowly. Like someone finally accepting gravity. Okay. The thing about secrets is, once spoken aloud, they gain gravity. They stop being shadows and start becoming threats. So naturally, someone overheard. It was late. Most workers had clocked out. Only a handful of night shift maintenance crews remained scattered across the warehouse. Brandon and I were tightening the last of the reinforced bolts on the faulty rack when someone cleared their throat behind us. We turned. Sierra, leaning against a support beam, coffee in hand. Expression unreadable. How much did you hear? I asked carefully. She lifted a brow. Enough to know there's footage that could end the Mercer name. Brandon stiffened. She continued, calm as ever. I didn't know whether to be disturbed or impressed. I stepped forward. Sierra, this can't get out. She looked between us. I'm not your enemy. If I wanted to post it, it'd already be live. And you're not planning to? Brandon asked. She smiled faintly. Not if you two are serious about fixing things. We are, I said. Then I'm making you a deal. We exchanged glances. She walked closer. Lowered her voice. Don't wait for the world to forgive you. Make it witness your transformation. Brandon flinched slightly. She continued. I don't want to leak that crash footage, but I do want access. Access to what? I asked cautiously. She pointed at both of us. To this. We stayed silent. She clarified. Let me document it, not for PR, not staged. A true, unfiltered redemption arc. A long-form exposé, not about two rich idiots who screwed up, but two men who chose to rebuild from the ground up. She let that sink in. Then, you don't get to control the edit. You don't get to rehearse. I follow you, I film everything, successes, failures, setbacks, progress. Brandon crossed his arms slowly. And if we say no? She smiled. Then Penelope, or your father, gets to control the narrative. Silence. Long. Heavy. Then Brandon nodded. Shockingly fast. I'm in. I looked at him. You sure? He didn't hesitate. I'm done hiding. He extended a hand toward Sierra. She took it. Then looked at me. Your turn. I exhaled. Then shook. That was the moment everything shifted. Our punishment became purpose. Our shame became story. Not a clean one. Not a pretty one. But a real one. Sierra didn't waste a single day. By the next morning, she showed up at the factory with 2 cameras, a lav mic setup, and a backpack that looked heavier than the welder's toolkits. She didn't announce herself to the crew. Didn't ask permission. She just hit record and told Brandon and me. Don't act, just exist. If you're fake, I'll know. If you're real, they will too. So that became our life. Wake, work, weld, film. Every misstep captured. Every insult from skeptical workers recorded. Every quiet win stored on hard drives like pieces of a fragile resurrection. But of course, nothing stays quiet forever. Especially when Gregory Mercer is involved. It was late evening when he finally appeared. Not with PR agents. Not with security. He walked right into the loading floor like he owned it. Which, technically speaking, he kind of did. The entire place froze. Brandon stiffened. Sierra's camera swung toward him. Gregory looked around. Slowly. Then asked without shouting, and somehow still commanding the entire room. "Who's in charge here?" Lewis opened his mouth. Then closed it. Then pointed at Brandon. Gregory turned to face his son. Silence. Tense, electric, thick. Then softly. "Why?" One word. Loaded with unspoken meaning. "Why are you here? Why are you embarrassing me? Why are you trying to change without my permission?" Brandon looked at him. Then said the one thing I don't think Gregory expected. "Because I don't want to become you." Every worker froze. The floor could have cracked from the tension. Gregory stared at him. And chuckled. Not amused. Something closer to disbelief. "You think this is nobility?" he asked. "You think wallowing in sweat and rust makes you virtuous?" "It makes me human," Brandon replied. Gregory stepped forward. Voice low. Cold. "You are a Mercer. You don't earn respect, you command it." Brandon held his ground. "I'm done commanding, I'm learning." Gregory's eyes shifted, for just a fraction of a second, toward Sierra's camera. Then back to his son. "Turn that off." Sierra didn't even blink. "Nope." A few workers snorted. Gregory's eye twitched. He turned back to Brandon. "And if I release the footage from the crash, the real footage?" I tensed. But Brandon didn't break. He simply said, "Then I'll release yours." The warehouse gasped collectively. That was it. The line in the sand. Gregory stood still for a long time. Then he smiled. Slow, sinister, proud. "Maybe all three at once." "Fine," he said. "Prove me wrong." Then he turned and walked away. The crew buzzed. Sierra whispered, "Jesus Christ, that's the trailer ending right there." Brandon leaned against a crate, trembling slightly. "I wasn't bluffing," he said. "I know," I replied. Neither was he. 3 months later, Sierra finished editing. The documentary hit YouTube, not polished like a Netflix premiere, raw, unfiltered. Title: Sons of Steel, 2 billionaire heirs become factory workers. Within 48 hours, 6 million views. Comments exploded. Not all praise, but not all hate. Somewhere between skepticism and admiration was respect. And now the twist. The one even I didn't see coming. 1 week after the release, Sierra called us. "You too might want to see this." She sent a link. A GoFundMe. Started by an anonymous user. Title: Rebuild Riverton for real, no PR. Description: If these 2 idiots can change, maybe so can we. Let's fix more than one rack. Let's rebuild the whole damn factory together. Goal: $500,000. Current amount: $2.7 million. I blinked. Anonymous. Sierra smirked. "Wanna guess who started it?" We didn't answer. We didn't have to. We already knew. Gregory Mercer. The same man who built dynasties. had anonymously funded a foundation for the people who held his son up. I turned to Brandon. He looked stunned. Not joyful. Not vindicated. Just human. Quiet. Like a man staring at a horizon he never believed existed. He exhaled. Then, for the first time since I met him, he smiled without ego. Just peace. So that's it. That's the story. Two idiots crashed into each other and collided into something bigger than guilt or rivalry. We're not saints now. We're not heroes. We're works in progress. And maybe that's enough. Oh, the end.